All right. We are live. Let's we'll give it a minute before we really dive in to get a little audience build. I can see we already have a fair amount of people joining. Greetings. Why do I hear myself?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you, Kim. Indeed. All right. Just a second, everyone. Welcome. I am Dan Cohen from Uncaptured Media. And I am just handling a small amount of technical issues. I lost my browser. There we go. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Dan Cohen from Uncaptured Media, and I'm joined by Kim Ives of Haiti Liberté, the English language editor, the editor of the English section of Haiti Liberté, who is, we are, as maybe you know, we are close collaborators on all things Haiti. And we, frankly, are the only independent journalists to be covering what's going on in Haiti. And so we're trying to bring coverage as much as we can. We did a documentary called Another Vision Inside Haiti's Uprising that we filmed in 2021 and we released in 2022. And it kind of tells it really shows the entire background to this moment. So we're, let's see, let me just tweet out that we are live now. We are live, though I guess you can watch on Twitter or YouTube. So a lot happening, even at the moment, outside of Haiti. There's now suggestions that Iran is going to attack Israel in retaliation for the bombing of the Iranian embassy in Syria. So that's a whole nother arena. But we're going to be focusing on Haiti tonight, on a different part of the geopolitical chessboard that is very important, is another major fault line of empire, but does not get the attention. But, as the situation has escalated, as this uprising that we've been documenting for a few years has reached a level of to the point where the U.S. puppet de facto prime minister Ariel Henry was expelled, was given the boot by the armed groups in Haiti at the end of not last month, at the end of February. Now we're into April, so we're gonna explain that. We're gonna talk about a lot. We're gonna talk about basically U.S. plans for the invasion of Haiti. We're trying to cobble together a sort of coalition of the willing, if you get the Bush era reference. And we're going to discuss the nature of the regime that the U.S. is trying to install in Haiti. And we are going to also discuss the armed groups in Haiti, the nature of them, and the leader of the coalition of armed groups, Jimmy Cherizier, also known as Barbecue, who has pledged to resist that invasion, any invasion. So thanks a lot for doing this, Kim. Glad you could be here.
It's me to thank you, Dan. You're a force of nature.
I've definitely been called worse things.
Okay.
So maybe, Kim, you can start us off with the moment. I mean, I think we can just kind of, you and I are pretty much on the same page, so I think we can just kind of tag team and where one falters, the other can pick it up. And everyone, feel free to comment, ask questions. We'll try to interact as much as possible. And there we go. Maybe that's slightly better. And also, feel, super chats, we will definitely go out of our way to make sure to answer. And if you want to contribute anything towards our work, which is, this is all self-funded independent journalism, you can do so at buymeacoffee.com/uncaptured, or patreon.com/uncaptured, or on my Substack is just uncaptured.media. Sign up there. So, but without any more shameless self-promotion, so on February 29th, the de facto prime minister of Haiti, Ariel Henry, who was anointed by the United States in a single tweet, was basically forced to step down, or though he hasn't officially resigned yet, he was not allowed into the country, and so Washington basically told him, your time is over. So Kim, can you kind of paint the picture to get us up to the moment where we are?
Right. There was sort of a dress rehearsal. I think we'll talk about dress rehearsals a couple of times tonight, but there was sort of a dress rehearsal on February 7th. Ariel Henry had announced on December 21st, 2022, the same day I was, in fact, addressing the UN Security Council about the situation in Haiti, after Ariel Henry had requested on October 9th of that year for UN military force to go in. And the address was that I gave to the UN, I think went a long way to sort of making them understand that at least Russia and China, that they needed to stop this usage of this international body by the U.S. as camouflage for their third intervention in 3 decades into Haiti. So on that same day, I think maybe aware that I was going to speak, etc., Ariel announced that, okay, we're going to have this transitional council called the HTC, High Transitional Council. And he announced a former presidential candidate, Mirlan Manigat, and a few others who were going to head it. And he said on February 7th, 2024, I will step down, we'll have had elections, blah, blah, blah. So sometime during 2023, some of the political class said, hey, he said he was going to step down on the 7th. So this became the big deadline that he had to go. Meanwhile, on November 30th, 2023, Guy Philippe, former rebel leader in 2004 against Jean-Bertrand Aristide, he led the armed rebels in the north. They came down through Haiti, and basically Aristide was kidnapped by the U.S. prior to their arrival in Port-au-Prince. But Guy Philippe was sort of the principal baton, they would say in Creole, or stick that the U.S. used to drive Aristide from power. And he thought, I think he was going to do, like, I don't know, Fidel after the 1959 revolution, just sort of waltz into the capital and take power. But the U.S. had another thing in mind, and they quickly sort of kicked him to the curb and put in their pre-selected IFI, International Financial Institution functionary, a guy called Gerard Latortue, as the prime minister. And he kind of slunk into obscurity in the Haitian countryside in the south for about a decade. During that period, the U.S. mounted several attempts to capture him for supposed drug trafficking, and they hadn't mentioned money laundering yet, but they in fact sent 10 raids out to get him, and he eluded all of them, often just by standing in the crowd of Haitians. The the DEA agents who came were so clueless. In any case, they managed to capture him in 2017, ambush him. He was then senator-elect for the South. He's very popular there. And they took him to Miami, and they said, okay, we're going to charge you with drug trafficking and money laundering. He was told by his lawyer, listen, it's conspiracy to commit money laundering, and you never can beat conspiracy, so you're best just to plead out and make a deal, which is what he did. And he got 7 years, a 9-year sentence, but he, with good conduct to get out after about 7, which is what happened. He got out after 6 years and 8 months. So going back to the thread, November 30th, 2023, he comes back to Haiti. So the political class is building up to say Aristide's got to be out by February 7th. Guy Philippe arrives in Haiti on the 30th, and he's got a silver tongue. He can really talk. He knows how to do it, and he totally has the pulse. He's following Haiti from his prison cells in the United States, and he starts to put out these internet addresses and online addresses, messages, radio interviews, and he does a sort of a truck top tour of Haiti, goes to various key towns, and particularly in the Northeast, where there's a canal being built. We can talk more about that later, which has become very much a sort of a flashpoint of Haitian nationalism because it was self-built by Haitian peasants. Dominicans tried to shut it down. Militia, which is identified with Guy Philippe, was sort of chest bumped with them and drove them back. So they were heroes. He became a hero. And in any case, a big movement sort of built around him. So on February 7th, there was a lot of demonstrating going on in the days before, particularly the 5th, 6th, and 7th. And everybody said, well, the guy's going to have to go. The demonstrations are just so strong. Now, Guy Philippe had said in these various addresses that they were going to do it peacefully through civil disobedience. They were simply going to shut the country down, take the car keys of all the ministers so they couldn't drive to work, occupy offices. He had these kind of, he was using Sri Lanka, the uprising there in 2019, I think it was it? I forget which year it was, but in any case, there was some sort of massive mobilization, pretty much nonviolent, which drove the regime from power. There might have been other factors, but in any case, this was his idea. There was going to be this. There were massive demonstrations, barricades everywhere across the city. But on February 7th, this militia, which its name is BSAP, which stands for Brigade for the Securing of Protected Spaces. They're basically park rangers. This brigade, which mushroomed from 300 or so when it was officially founded in 2017 under Jovenel Moïse, had mushroomed to somewhere between 15 and 50,000, mostly volunteer, mostly unarmed members. But a truck of the BSAP agents was coming down the road into Port-au-Prince, and they were ambushed, machine gunned by Haitian cops. 5 BSAP agents were killed. They thought Guy Philippe was in that car. He was, in fact, a few cars behind. And everything basically ground to a stop. Guy Philippe, who had showed up in Port-au-Prince a day or two earlier, had gone more or less into hiding. And Ariel was there on February 8th, the day Dan and I arrived in Port-au-Prince. So it looked like the movement to uproot Jovenel had more or less had its back broken. And that's when we arrived, and we spent, how many days was it, Dan? 3, 4, 5 days? Maybe 4.
Something. 4 days.
4 days, filming and interviewing BSAP people, Jimmy Cherizier, etc. In any case, it looked like the moment had passed, and we were going to have to wait a while before we saw what happened next. Well, we didn't have to wait long, because essentially the Kenyan High Court had ruled on January 26th that Kenyan police could not go to Haiti to be part of what's called this uh, uh, multinational security support mission, MSS, which is not a UN mission. This is just a UN blessed mission. And the mission is essentially a US mission using mercenaries in the form of other nations, poor nations, police forces. And the Kenyans were going to lead it. But the Kenyan court said, no, they can't lead it. They can't do it unless there's a bilateral agreement between the two countries. And anyway, this was impossible because there was no elected government to sign such an agreement, and there's no parliament to ratify such an agreement. But they just charged ahead with it anyway. And Ariel Henry, after going to a CARICOM conference, flew across the Atlantic to Kenya to sign. He didn't sign it, in fact. Who signed it? It was I think it was the environment minister, in fact, or the putative environment. I mean, it was some really marginal ministry who signed it because he couldn't for some reason. I mean, it's funny how they can trample the law, and yet they'll observe one little curlicue of it, and think that will somehow fool people. In any case, during this period when he was over there, Jimmy Cherizier, who is again the subject of our 2022 film, Another Vision, said, this is the moment to act. Ariel's out of the country. He's doing a complete outrageous act of going to sign this accord that nobody wants, nobody agrees with, and he's not coming back in. And he had launched 6 months earlier, back in the summer and September of 2023, right about the time that Dan and I were doing another shoot in Haiti, a thing called Vivre Ensemble, which means live together in Creole. And the purpose of that was to unite not only his federated gangs, which is an anti-crime federation called the G9 Family and Allies, mess with one, you mess with all, revolutionary forces of the G9 Family and Allies. But he was uniting with the GPEP, which was a confederation of criminal gangs, or mostly criminal gangs, which were most of them, again, in the service of the oligarchy and were being used to fight him and his revolutionary project. So he said, the only way I'm going to be able to prevail against Ariel Henry is to unite with these guys, And we asked him about this back in that early February interviews we did after the failed February 7th uprooting. And we said, you still think you can do this Vivre Something? And he said, it's hard. We've had setbacks. It hasn't been working, but I still think we can. Still think that's our only choice. Well, sure enough, it worked. It did work, at least in this first little test. The gangs went out. They basically shut down the airport. They started to attack the police stations in government offices. And this mobilized people in the north who also shut down the airport up there. And as a result, Ariel Henry has not come back. And so here we are today. The U.S. has had to scramble, Blinken had to run and make an emergency meeting. They called it emergency, using CARICOM blackface, the same way they're using Kenyan blackface to disguise the U.S. intervention militarily. They have to use CARICOM, primarily Guyana, their new number one agent in the hemisphere, Jamaica, who's always been a willing sidekick, and Barbados, Mia Motley, to more or less hold this meeting. A lot of CARICOM has not agreed with this, I should say. But anyway, they got these three to more or less hold the meeting under CARICOM's banner. And they appointed another government, which was made up principally of their preferred alternative, which is called the Montana Accord, with a few other people. But clearly they were hoping with this 9-member commission, 7 of them voting, 2 of them observer, in other words, shall we say, window dressing, religious and civil society sectors. But, you know, it was a completely poorly engineered solution, because they basically took the very dysfunctional Haitian political class and condensed it down into an even more dysfunctional 7 voting member body. And they've, had people swapped in, swapped out. They're fighting among each other, all vying. Each one wants to have their candidate be the presidential candidate, because they're going to nominate this presidential commission a president and a prime minister. So there's just an incredible amount of what they call in Haiti the panier crab, the crab basket. The crabs are fighting and climbing and rolling and wrestling. Anyway, so that's where we are. Meanwhile, it's the U.S., Washington is racing to get their proxy force on the ground. But it's a problem. They're having problems in Kenya. They're having problems in Benin, where they're also getting troops, in Chad, where they're also getting troops. The Canadians just flew down to Jamaica to train some Bahamians, and who else? Barbados. I don't have it in front of me, but a few other Caribbean countries. So, they're just totally on their back foot racing. But the problem is, the force on the ground right now is Jimmy Cherizier's Vivre Ensemble. Meanwhile, Guy Philippe has been making, beautiful proclamations from his base in the rural South, and a lot of the country is clamoring for Guy Philippe to be president. Jimmy Cherizier says he has no problem with Guy Philippe, that he feels they have the same vision. So that's where we are. It's really a race, if I can sum up all this long background. It's really a race between the U.S. with its 7-headed monster that it's created, that's rejected by the people, and backed by this blackface mercenary force, against Guy Philippe and Jimmy Cherizier, who are also seeking to take power. But basically, the ball is on the rim. Power is in the air, shall we say, is up in the air, up for grabs. And who is going to get it? Is it going to be Cherizier and Guy Philippe and the Haitian people, or at least those that support those 2 forces? Or is it going to be the U.S. and its political class allies, which will essentially be the continuation of the status quo? So Haiti is in the opening moves, shall we say, of what I call a revolutionary process. A lot of people on the left, I think, take at least so-called left, take issue with that, because they have a very set schema, maybe, of how they see a revolution happening. But to me, if you've been following closely, this is what we're having. We are having an uprising of Haiti's underclass. They are armed, they are angry, they have agency, and as we used to say in football, agile, mobile, hostile. They are not to be trifled with.
All right. Thanks, Kim, so that kind of brings us up to the sort of the current moment. I want to tease a little bit of that out and show some of the work we've been doing, I think it will help people understand. So basically, sort of summarize, you have on one hand the two main federations of armed groups that had been fighting for years: the G9, led by Jimmy Cherizier Barbecue, and the JPEP, which was a criminal group, united. Jimmy Cherizier, all the time that he was fighting against them, he was saying, guys, let's stop fighting and let's turn our weapons against the oligarchs. Let's have a revolution instead of fighting each other. So he was always very reticent to fight. And then you have this other BASAP group, which has become very much kind of the pride of Haiti in a way, because of what they did with this this canal along the Dominican border, where they basically confronted Dominican soldiers. And so suddenly they went from a very small marginal force to now they're anywhere between 15 and 25 or 30,000 strong, and sort of a ragtag group. So you have this kind of, and they've pledged to join the People's Revolution, to accompany the People's Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And Ariel Henry was trying to dispose of them, but he had no legal authority to do so, and they rejected it. And so you have these kind of two phenomenon, and then you have the U.S. trying to race in to get this foreign invasion, and is trying to cobble together these groups, and is now trying to get a new sort of regime to basically be the face of it, to try to legitimize it, so it's just not so naked. So I want to show this whole concept of Vivre Ensemble, which is the formerly rival armed groups, the Anti-Crime Federation of the G9 family and allies, or the Revolutionary Forces of the G9 family and allies. Mess with one, mess with all is their official formal name. That joined with the criminal groups that have basically, the cardinal rule, and this is what Jimmy Cherizier told us, is that the cardinal rule is no kidnapping. So basically, they have to renounce their, if they're going to be criminals, they can't really be part of this. How much power does he have to enforce it? It's not exactly, that's kind of to be determined in a way. But what we did see last week, when this YouTuber, Addison Malouf, who goes by the moniker on YouTube, or on Twitch, or wherever he streams, Your Fellow Arab, he went to Haiti a couple of weeks ago in order to interview Barbecue, and he flew into Cap-Haïtien in the north, and then he posted a video where he said he was gonna drive down to Port-au-Prince to interview Barbecue, which is just a completely insane thing to do. It's obviously he has no idea what he's doing. You're basically guaranteed to get shaken down or even kidnapped on the way, and that's exactly what happened. So this guy, Lamont Saint-Jour, who is the head of a group called the 400 Maozo, one of the most notorious kidnapping rings, criminal groups, that had joined Vivre Ensemble, so ostensibly had renounced, not going to be involved in crime anymore. They kidnapped him. He wandered into their territory, like basically a very foolish idea. He wandered into their territory, got kidnapped, and then when we found out, he finally he was able to use his phone from time to time. He was in touch with his friend, another streamer. They went public with it, and then as soon as we saw, this was last Friday morning.
I should interject. They went public after ransom had been paid,
okay,
and he wasn't released, and then they said, okay,
right. So basically, he paid a ransom of something like $40,000 to Lamont Saint-Jour, was not released, and then decided to go public to try to create international pressure. I woke up at 6:30 in the morning on Friday, saw the situation, called Kim, we called Cherizier, and he immediately got on the issue and said, send me whatever information you have. He immediately called Lamont Saint-Jean and put out a message to the Vivre Ensemble guys and said, what's going on here? Kidnapping is not allowed. Anyone know what this is? And, so a day later, 24 hours later, this guy, Your Fellow Arab, was released by Lamont Saint-Jean with no further ransom paid. So it shows the sort of, the power, to whatever degree it is, that Cherizier wields inside Vivre Ensemble.
And according to Addison Pierre Malouf, he said that he would wage war if he wasn't released.
Right. That's what Cherizier said to Lamont Saint-Jean. We don't know exactly what he said. That's according to this guy, so we don't know. However, Cherizier has always been very anti-kidnapping. He's never tolerated it. And he fought against kidnappers for many years. And so now that he's in an alliance with this group that carried out a kidnapping, he flexed his muscles in some way and compelled he compelled Lamont Saint-Jean to release him. So it sort of shows the dynamic that obviously this Vivre Ensemble coalition is not perfect, but it is certainly progress from where things would have been, say, a year ago, where Cherizier would have had no leverage to tell someone to release a kidnapping victim, and it didn't. With once he found out, there was no more ransom involved. So I would say that's a positive step. So all of that to say, this is what the Vivre Ensemble coalition is, and what they succeeded in doing, and what I think is changing the minds of Haitians in Haiti, is the fact that they gave the boot to Ariel Henry, the de facto prime minister, who was universally reviled and was imposed by the U.S. in a completely anti-democratic process of the U.S. simply anointing him by tweet. And everyone wanted to get rid of him because the condition, the situation of the country just continued to worsen and worsen. So all of a sudden, these monster gangs, who some of which have been terrorizing the population, are suddenly doing the will of the people. So things are starting to look a little bit different. But I want to show this clip this is actually from an episode, a long report, a new episode of our documentary, Another Vision, that we're working on, that I've been working on all day. And if we weren't doing this live stream, I'd probably be working on it right now, but we're trying to get out imminently. Not going to announce a date yet. But I want to show this clip that we did release last week, where you see, this is from August 2023, when Kim and I went down to Haiti to continue our investigative work. And this is a few days before they officially announced this group, Vivre Ensemble. And so, hang on, let me just get this. No, there we go. Okay. So who you see on the right of your screen, of course, is Cherizier, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, and then on the left is a guy named what's his real name? Toto's real name?
Toto Alexandre's
Toto. Marc Andre, right? Marc Andre, aka Toto Alexandre, who is the spokesperson for the Bel Air neighborhood. Bel Air and Cherizier's Lower Delma neighborhood are up against each other, and they had been fighting for years. And if you watch our documentary, Another Vision, you'll see that Toto Alexandre is one of the antagonists, who's denouncing Barbecue, who's saying, the people don't want a revolution. Barbecue's out of his mind, all these things. And now we go down there, and Toto Alexandre has changed his tune. Now he's speaking in very strong anti-imperialist tones. So I want to show this clip so you get a sense of what this piece is, what the Vivre Ensemble coalition is, at least from these two.
Et que nous disons, bon, on met tête nous ensemble pour ne pas quitter Tinec faire nous mouvement encore, pour nous garder comme nous capables de délivrer pays. Et peut-être ça l'envoie message ça va le monde entier. La paix ça qu'on la paix.
Soit disant, il y a des gens qui disent tout et sinon même pas connaître tout. Il y a des gens qui disent tout oui, la paix ça c'est quoi nous qui la même. N'a dit tout le monde non, nous pas faire fin nous dans goumé. Nous pas faire fin nous dans bataille. C'est pour ça bon Dieu parle là nous avec maman spirituelle nous obligés font on tabe rond pour tout petit pays à Kachita ensemble pour nous parler pour nous définir. Même pas qu'on personne monde soit disant bandit, si me dit au monde bandit. Mais c'est l'état placé pour cadre monde. Voilà c'est le deuxième bagarre. Ça vient arriver moi personnellement nous te kan goumé face avec TBG nous vraiment goumé. Mais là, on regarde le bac mener nous à quel côté, bac mener nous nulle part. Nous obligés font chita parler ensemble pour nous faire retarder. Regardez qui ça regarde. Nous obligés ouais côté nous voulons aller, côté nous voulons aller. Il y a des gens qui ne comprennent pas ce qu'a fait là. Il y a des gens qui ignorent ce qu'a fait là. Mais un jour, bon Dieu, mettez à une réalité.
So there you see what these guys decided between themselves, that fighting is not getting them anywhere. They're the only people that are being hurt are the residents of the neighborhood. No one is gaining anything. And, we should be clear that the Toto is not much of a fighter himself. He is he's the spokesman for the neighborhood. The leader of the armed group in Bel Air is a guy named Kempes Sanon, who has been a very notorious kidnapper. He actually escaped.
Convicted kidnapper.
I'm sorry?
Convicted kidnapper.
Yes, a convicted kidnapper where he escaped from a prison, and I believe killed the warden on the way out. This is so it's a very there's a lot of contradictions and it's very tenuous here. But I mean, I'll say this: these years that I've been working with Kim to make this documentary, and we've been interviewing Cherizier, he's saying, I got to ally with these guys. I don't have any other choice. We got to make an alliance. And we were very skeptical of it. How do you make an alliance with criminals? But he's actually having a fair amount of success at this point in convincing them to stop carrying out these kinds of crimes, those kidnappings.
And if I can jump in there, Dan, with one thing, is you have to also look at the nature of this coalition, because these other gangs that were doing kidnapping and crimes, in fact, have more money because of their kidnapping, more guns, more ammunition, and more soldiers than Cherizier. So he's a little bit, a mouse directing elephants.
He's the underdog.
He's the underdog. But he has the media attention. He has a lot of guts to stand up. He's got charisma to spare.
Conviction. And
he's very articulate. And so they've come to see that he's become some kind of champion, some kind of Robin Hood champion. And so to some extent, they may calculate, well, if things go forward and, the Marines come in here, we're all going to be, messed, destroyed probably, one. And two, they might have a lot of money, but there's not much they can do. They're kind of stuck where they are, maybe importing, girls and beer and video equipment to, do just little parties. But, it's not much of a life. You can't really enjoy your ill-gotten gains. So they may be looking for some kind of way out. And they see, okay, this is it. Maybe we can get absolution. We can do. And Guy Philippe, who has been a law and order guy and was essentially telling them during his speeches leading up to February 7th, listen, lay down your arms. We'll give you an amnesty. We'll let you go if you, go quietly into the night and stop causing headaches. So, and this has been a little bit of Cherizier's message too, just saying, listen, you guys, stop it. We don't want to fight among each other. Don't do things against the people, and let's point our guns not at each other, but at the bourgeoisie and, by extension, the imperialists who are coming after us. So it's an interesting dynamic. Cherizier has the weight morally and politically, but they have the weight in terms of ammo, guns, and money.
I mean, I think another aspect of that is a lot of the dirt, or a lot of the dirty, the crimes that those groups committed they were doing it because they were paid by the oligarchs. So when they would attack a neighborhood or go burn something down or burn a business, they weren't just doing it for no reason. It was very strategic. Cherizier, in our documentary, he talks about an oligarch who named Reginald Boulos, who's very close to the Clintons and very close to the U.S. He asked Cherizier to go burn down. He owns the
Nissan.
the Nissan dealership. He owns like one of the largest car dealerships in Port-au-Prince. And he brought in, called Cherizier and come to my office or something like that, and said, I want you to go and burn down the Toyota dealership across the street from your neighborhood. So it's these kinds of things. And Cherizier basically politely declined and just said no, So it's these kinds of things. So all of a sudden, if the sources of funding these oligarchs dry up, then they're not, so they don't have any great reason to go and do these kinds of crimes. And the other thing is, as they understand that, basically the oligarchs created the criminal armed groups. They gave them the guns, they gave them the ammo, they gave them the money to do these things. And then they essentially lost control of them. The armed groups grew and became, in some way, independent. What's that? Autonomous, exactly. And so all of a sudden, they've lost control of these monsters they've created. And Cherizier is going to them and saying, look, now they want to bring in a foreign invasion to kill you guys and to kill me. So maybe those guys like Kempes, Sanon, whoever else is thinking, well, okay, maybe, now I don't, they're changing their attitude. I think that's another important element of it, that, the guys that created us now want to kill us. So, we're obviously not going to go along with that. And they have the weapons to defend themselves, at least certainly in their neighborhoods. So
Dan,
I think, yeah.
Can I just do one other interjection?
Please.
It should also be noted that the fellow that you see speaking, Toto Alexandre, has been very much the principal, I'll say, pretext that a lot on the ultra left, particularly on the Haitian ultra left, use to condemn Cherizier. He burns people, he's fighting, because in Toto, we included him in Another Vision because he was very much sort of the principal voice against Cherizier. And at the end, he says, or at the beginning, he says Cherizier is the biggest enemy of Haiti and humanity, something like that. So that was built on the basis that Kempes and his gangs, which were working for a politician named Don Cateau, who has a base, a gang base up there called Baz Cameroon, the Cameroon base, were attacking Cherizier. And to some extent, this is left over from attacking Jovenel, because a lot of the criminal gangs were begun by the people who make up part of Ariel Henry's coalition to undermined Jovenel Moïse. In fact, after Jovenel Moïse was killed, one of them in particular, Vitalon Innocent, went on YouTube and radio and made a very detailed, explicit, concrete explanation of how André Michel, who was the principal mainstay of Ariel Henry's power, had basically recruited him and had him do lots of terrible things. But then after Jovenel was out, he was kind of cut out of the bargain. And so he said, screw that, and went into business fighting or denouncing them at least. But it turns out he was kind of still dealing with them on some level. We learned in some of our reporting, Dan and I, when we went down there, particularly from people who were very close to him, that, Ariel and André Michel and what's called the SDP, the Sector Démocratique Populaire, were still using Vitellum and still on pretty good terms with him, even though he was causing them trouble. So you have this very nuanced, very complex board, but the essence being that the JPEP groups, their fundamental purpose, we could say, in addition to being useful for other things, but was to fight Cherizier, was to keep Cherizier at bay. And that is why this was the principal hurdle Cherizier had to be able to overcome. He had to, as he said to us, make a deal with the devil in order to be able to go forward. So, that's just the update I need to give. Sorry, turn off this phone.
That's all right. This is, I hope this is useful for people to understand. I mean, what is a pretty kind of complex layout, but you understand the kind of basic, I think the basic takeaway there is that the oligarchs created the gangs and now they lost control. And so they want to take them out in order to prevent them from allying with Cherizier and having a real popular revolution. So we can, there's a lot of sort of topics we can discuss here. I think we should maybe talk about this transitional council, this presidential transitional council, who is on it, and what is the status of it? Who are the different groups on it? And maybe you can fill us in on that, Kim.
Yeah. Well, I don't have them in front of me.
Do you want to pull up the list? I can pull up.
Yeah, can you pull them up? Okay, you pull it up, and I'll work from that. I could pull it up. I've got it right here in the paper here too, as well.
That's all right. I think I can pull it up in Haiti Lib.
That way I can be looking. I have most of them already in mind. I'll start with that, and then you can be pulling it up in the meantime. Uh-huh. So the core, as we said at the beginning, is really two parties, which are, I could say, the most lackey-like, the most quisling parties, which are the Montana Group, which is a sort of what we call in Haiti the bourgeoisie éclairée, the sort of enlightened bourgeoisie, who, enlightened is relative because many
liberal.
Of them were,
I think you mean kind of like the liberal elites, the counterpart to like the Ariel Henry sort of.
Right. And
go ahead.
And they're sort of embodied by the woman who has been their principal face and spokesperson over these years, a woman called Magali Como-Denis, who was, like many of the other members of this coalition, part of the coup d'etat against Aristide in 2020. In 2004, she headed a thing called the Collectif No, the No Collective, which was all the intellectuals and so forth who, said Aristide was a dictator and doing terrible things. And they helped the boycott of the 2004 bicentennial. And then she has joined, or got in that sort of a fringe of the ultra-left groups in the sector called MPDP, which stands for the Mouvement Populaire Démocratique, something, MPDP, headed by a guy called Kami Chalmers. He's the sort of leading light of it. So a lot of the ultra-left, they talk anti-imperialist game, but are basically, we call them the NGO left because most of them just do sort of NGO work. a guy up on the central plateau of Haiti called Chavan Jean-Baptiste, who is some kind of compatriot or eminence grise of Kami Shamers, heads a thing called the Papai Peasant Movement, MPP. So this sector is kind of connected to it. And then just a smattering of different individuals and so forth. So Montana is very key. That's number one. But ironically, very ironically, their principal ally, their principal friend in it is Famille Lavalas, Lavalas family party of Jean-Bertrand Aristide, who was part of Montana, and then they bailed out, typically, kept a distance, but have been kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. This is vintage Lavalas politics, to be everywhere and nowhere. You have a foot in, foot out. Sometimes they have members who are, facing off against each other in different coalitions, and so they'll have like one person anywhere, so they can kind of go anywhere. In any case, they have a seat, so that's 2 of the seats. Now, facing them, and they're, I could say, the core of, I would say, the U.S. group. And facing them is really a guy who broke away from the Lavalas family party, a guy called Moïse Jean Charles. He was a senator. He was sort of Aristide's heir apparent in 2013, and making very radical speeches, speaking very forcefully against the Martelly government at the time and against the foreign military occupation of the country, which didn't please the Lavalas leadership at the time. For example, at one point, he called a march on the U.S. Embassy. This was at a time when we at Haiti Liberté were in very close alliance with him, going on delegations to Brazil to get the UN troops out, etc. And he called a march on the U.S. Embassy, and to kind of undercut it, to sabotage it, Lavalas called a march the same day to the what's called the L'École Argentine, the Argentinian school, where the massacre of November 29th, 1987, there was a massacre that was done during an election, was carried out. The embassy demonstration got a lot more people. Lavalas didn't get many, but it did kind of show this rift. And finally, even though this rift was happening and this tension was happening, Aristide had been talking to Moïse and had sort of assured him that he was going to be getting the mantle, as Aristide gradually stepped back into Nelson Mandela status of some sort. But instead, on the fateful day, and it was in May of 2013, I think, shortly after Aristide had been hauled into the Palace of Justice of Haiti to answer questions about something else, he didn't give the mantle to Moïse Jean Charles. He gave it to a woman called Maryse Narcisse, who was a completely obedient, faithful, but very uninspiring mid-level doctor, functionary of the party. And that immediately caused Moïse to sort of break away. And he formed his own party called the Petit Dessalines, Dessalines' Children, which had a more leftist, more fiery, more different message. So he has the third seat in this case. He originally had said he's not going into it, but our analysis is that he decided to go into it because he'd had some dealings, one with Guy Philippe and 2 with Cherizier. So I think he thought, okay, if I'm out of this transitional presidential commission council, when they come to power, if they come to power, I'm going to be one of the first people they arrest, because they're going after Cherizier, they're going after Guy Philippe, and they're going to come after me. So he said, the only way I can guarantee myself some kind of immunity is to get into it. So anyway, he got in, which, is typical Moïse Jean Charles. And then he has a kind of a coalition that he had formed called the January 30th Collective. And it has in it a party called the OPL as principally, even though it was Petit Dessalines that started. And so the collective, the January 30th Collective, is headed by the OPL party, which is headed by a guy called Edgar Leblanc, fils. So now Moïse and Edgar and OPL are a kind of a block too. So you have Montana and Lavalas. You have Petit Dessalines with January 30th. Now we got three more voting members. Now one of those is the business sector, a guy called Laurent Saint-Cyr, who was part of Ariel Henry's HCT, that before mentioned, High Council of Transition, who represents the business sector. You see, you have all these parties, but the business sector gets their own representative. So now we got 5. The 6th is a thing called the
I'm looking at here.
I've got it in my head. No, I know it. The 6th one that we can mention is what's called the December 21st Coalition, which is essentially the coalition on the previous mentioned December 21st of 2022 that was formed around Ariel Henry. So that's basically Ariel Henry's coalition, and that's headed by a guy called Louis. His name's escaping me right now. I see him very.
Louis Gerard Gilles.
Yeah, Gerard Gilles. So Gerard Gilles, a complete opportunist, used to be a Lavalas senator. It went over there. So we'll get to him in a minute. And then the last one, the 7th, is a group called Aide Red. Aide is basically the party of Claude Moïse, who was the prime minister bumped out by Ariel Henry, who has been very Joveneliste and is, I could say, closer to the Moïse, Jean Charles, and Collective 30th. So they've got 3. Laurent is seen as closer to Montana. Laurent Saint-Cyr of the business sector is closer to Montana and Lavalas. So you got 6 and 6. So kind of the swing vote. The one everybody is kind of watching is Gerard Gilles, because he used to be Lavalas. He's going to go with Lavalas. But at the same time, he's representing the Ariel Henry coalition, December 21st coalition, which was basically the lemon against the milk, as they say, l'état citron, the bitter enemy of Montana. So is he going to go with the Montana Lavalas Saint-Cyr group, or is he going to go with the Moïse Jean Charles OPL Aide group? Because that will decide which one has 4 against 3, and therefore who can pick the president. Now, he apparently wants to be the president, Gerard Gilles. We're told by a source who has been pretty good that he's even paid money to the head of the palace guard to, help get the palace to be inaugurated or sworn in. Anyway, there's a lot of wheeling and dealing and background thing going on with this commission. But I think just to give our watchers, listeners, a sense of the dynamics within this council, or some of the dynamics, that's just a kind of a thumbnail I could give.
I mean, the U.S. and CARICOM, who are overseeing this, have made it clear, explicit, that anyone who is going to be on this presidential transition council has to support the MSS, aka the foreign invasion. So all of these parties are vying to be, sitting on the front of the basically U.S. tank to go into power.
Yeah.
And I
The
think
hood
that's
ornament.
yeah, exactly. So all of these parties are, kind of traditional political class, from sort of left to right, from liberal to conservative, that are all acting as tools of the U.S. Most notably, in my opinion, Fanmi Lavalas, which, of course, three decades ago was a real people's party. I mean, I think I don't know, maybe Kim, can you maybe in like 1 minute, because there's still a lot I want to get to, but maybe in a minute, can you give or 2 minutes, can you give a succinct explanation of how Lavalas went from grassroots popular party that shocked the world by electing Haiti's first most popular president ever, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, to a hood ornament of a U.S. tank seeking to invade Haiti today?
Well, it would take a lot more than a minute, but the essence that you need to understand is that Aristide, who is, by the party's own bylaws, the leader for life of the party, is a devotee of Toussaint Louverture. Now, Toussaint Louverture, many people think of him, he led the Haitian Revolution. Well, yes and no. He didn't really lead the revolution. That was really Jean-Jacques Dessalines who carried out the revolution. And that was 13 years, 1791 to 1804. And it really had two parts. There was the struggle. I mean, I'll have to simplify it down very much, but there were two basic classes that had interests in this revolution. One was the masses of slaves, 500,000 slaves, and the other was the class of the affranchis, which were in many cases the freed slaves or the children of slave masters and slave mothers, and who had their freedom. So the freedmen or the affranchis were often property owners and often very wealthy, but they didn't have all the rights of a French citizen. So in the watchwords of the French Revolution, liberté, égalité, fraternité, they didn't have égalité. They didn't have equality. And they were fighting for that. They were maybe represented, say, principally by a guy called Alexandre Pétion. But the masses of slaves, they wanted, out of liberté, égalité, fraternité, they wanted liberté. They wanted freedom. And that was their fight. And their leader was really Jean-Jacques Dessalines. And the Haitian Revolution was really created by the union of these two on May 18th, 1803, when they had a big meeting. They got together. They'd been bitter enemies, often fighting. Very complex. Revolutions are very complex things. They're real Rubik's Cubes. But they got together, the affranchis with the masses of slaves, Jean-Jacques Dessalines with Pétion, and they kicked out the French. They drove out the French. They beat Napoleon's armies. And Haiti became the first independent nation of Latin America in 1804. And the first Black nation, it was the icebreaker. Now, Pétion ended up assassinating Dessalines 2 years later in 1806. But they did achieve this incredible historical watershed moment that's changed all history, began the end of slavery, etc. Wow, I lost my thread. Going back. So Toussaint had been really a representative of the affranchis too. He had been a slave, but was freed very early and educated. But he never had a vision that Haiti could be independent. This didn't enter his head. He was really the first neo-colonialist. He said, listen, Napoleon, I can run this better than your emissaries from Paris. I understand the people, I have their trust. I can do it. Make me the chief, and he kind of imposed himself. And until Napoleon finally sent down an expedition, and Toussaint was basically running the colony, and they captured him, and they took him back in chains to France, to a prison cell. And basically a year later, Toussaint died of the cold in Fort de Joux, in the mountains of France, writing letters to Napoleon saying, listen, I can be your best representative, the best runner of the colony. I know how to deal with my people. And in fact, he did even at one point execute his own nephew, who was pushing for a more revolutionary situation. Anyway, Aristide very much had this vision. And Toussaint's approach had been to play off the imperialists, the colonists, French, Spanish, English, against each other. And this is what Aristide really liked, was the jouet d'intelligence. He comes out of the Jesuit tradition. Jesuits are supposed to be very clever in the Catholic orders, and the Salesians are sort of an offshoot of the Jesuits. And anyway, so Aristide did this in his 1990 election, kind of a last-minute flip, and he ended up in power. He couldn't do it again. He tried a couple of times. But the point being that Aristide, and he once said, and I quote it in one of the articles I wrote, he said, one thing's for sure, if we don't have the support of the international community code for Washington, we're not going to succeed. So he's always been trying to get Washington's approval. He's always been trying to show Washington, the same way Toussaint was trying to show Napoleon, that I can be the best guy to run your neo-colony. Let me do it. Washington never wanted to let him do it. They just could not trust him. And, we can go into all the details of why that was the case. But the long story short is that Aristide always had this proclivity to bend over for Washington, to be their guy. And now he sees his moment. They need me. I'm being called. And to some extent, it's true. They're having to call him in. They're including him. They're putting him with Montana. And of course, the Lavalas diehards will tell you, well, it's all we're going to fix him down the road. But anyway, that explains a little bit the gradual rightward, until now, complete betrayal that Lavalas has carried out over the course of its history, which began in 1996. I mean, the Famille Lavalas is a party founded in 1996, and I could say, I don't know if we can put it as the date of death on March 11th, 2024, but it's pretty close to it. That's when they went into a coma by joining into this imperialist concoction.
Right, where they're now willing to, they want to go along with this Kenyan invasion, this U.S. organized, orchestrated invasion, sending Kenyan death squads, among others.
Did I get that in under a minute, Dan?
I think it was about 30 seconds, something like that.
Okay, good.
So I want to show another clip, also from the excerpt that we recently published of our forthcoming report. And this is Cherizier and Toto Alexandre's former rival saying that they are going to resist. Cherizier saying that he's going to resist any foreign invasion. And so he is the only figure in Haiti saying this. Obviously, I mean, the other armed groups are not saying this. No one else is saying that. Cherizier, leader of Vive Ensemble, is saying that. Obviously, Lavalas is not saying it. Lavalas is doing the complete opposite. So, I mean, I think it really speaks volumes, especially to, our critics who say that Cherizier is some kind of psyop or CIA plan.
Yeah, especially our Lavalas critics who usually hide behind a anonymous handle on Twitter. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, Well, what Kim is referring to is there's sort of a cult around Lavalas that, of basically American journalists or observers who are kind of checked out from Haiti and are still living in, the 90s or 2004 when Aristide was overthrown, and are not in tune with what's happening now, and are not, treating this as a scientific endeavor where you have to, go to Haiti and figure out what's going on and see what the current situation is. They're just kind of like living in some nostalgia that has no real relevance to the current situation in Haiti.
And realize that half of the population is under age 25.
Right. Exactly. And that even, maybe among the older, correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, but among the older generations, maybe there's some nostalgia, but in terms of current political relevance, that Lavalas has, it's just not there. And evidenced by the fact that it's, vying for power on the front of a U.S. Invasion. So I want to show this clip of Cherizier talking about his pledge to resist. Let me just pull it up here. We've got it there. Okay, here goes.
Peuple a dans la rue pour nous dire non avec abat occupation, abat toute force étrangère et que l'est arrivé pour États-Unis, la France, Canada, bah nous-mêmes haïtiens chance pour c'est nous qui décider pour décider tête nous, pour décider pays nous. C'est peut-être ça en deux quartiers populaires aujourd'hui, vent conscience là, vent la paix a soufflé et ça qu'un commence à triompher. Goumé nous parler pour faire bouge d'amieux à virer côté virer parce que contre oligarque nous allons gommer contre assassin qui dans gouvernement et puis nous allons gommer contre l'Occident qui pense le cabine imposer nous Ariel Henry qui sont sanguinaires ont assassin qui participent dans le président Jovenel Moïse. Tout étranger qui a venu là yo, il y a fait même Jean ministre fait en 2004 violer petit garçon, Jean soldat uruguayen ont fait violer petit fille, violer femme. Il y a fait même Jean Népalais côté choléra pour nous, côté 20 000 haïtiens mourir dans choléra. Plus passer 500 l'autre infecté, l'ONU connaît ça. L'ONU mène bon enquête, il connaît que c'est Népalais et qui quitté pour choléra. Qui ça fait? On va jamais dédommager nous. Et on refuse de reconnaître que c'est eux qui portent maladie en Haïti. Et si force étrangère yo t'a venu, si Ariel Henry yo t'a venu arrêter, nous t'a content. Si force étrangère yo t'a venu et sécurité yo t'a metté pour qui permettre que monde circuler pour la vie reprendre, nous t'a content. Force étrangère yo venu pour venir consolider pouvoir oligarque. C'est pour ça qui contrôle 85% de richesse pays. Force étrangère yo venu pour venir consolider Ariel Henry parce que connaît participer à l'assassinat de Jovenel Moïse. Et seule façon pour le parler devant la justice pour ne pas arrêter, c'est mener force étrangère yo venu et puis pour le faire élection pour y vider, pour le mettre monde par le livrer à ce moment-là pour le parler répondre sur la justice. Et pour être ça dans le quartier populaire, au monde Bel-Air, Toto représenter Bel-Air, moi représenter force révolutionnaire, Genève, famille et Allemagne et tout. Et je dis pas ni Genève, pas ni GPEP. Je dis à vivre ensemble. N'a prétend force étrangère là, si on connaît pour venir entrer dans le quartier populaire, pour venir faire massacre, venir tirer, venir massacrer monde, venir faire Cadéjac, laisse ça nous-mêmes dans le quartier populaire qui est sans dessaline dans nous, n'a campé n'a goumé contre jusqu'à dernier bout de sang nous.
Yeah. So that's
I mean, it's a pretty remarkable statement to me, and I can't even begin to understand how anyone could doubt the integrity, sincerity of what he's saying. And
or call him a CIA pawn or something. Yeah, right. I mean,
right. Yeah, I mean the only gang leader in Haiti who's under U.S., UK, EU, Canadian, and UN. Sanctions. And that this is the guy that the U.S. has been targeting for years, even before Haiti Liberté figured out what was going on. The U.S. was already targeting him, so they had through their proxies figured out what the real story was. And I mean that that's I think a kind of a perfect transition in a way to the proxy that I think was probably alerted that alerted Washington to the threat to the system that Cherizier posed is a guy named Pierre Esperance, who is really one of the most dangerous men in Haiti. And in fact, he doesn't he's not well he he's not the leader of an armed group, though there are some rumors circulating. He is a so-called human rights figure who heads Haiti's foremost so-called human rights group called the Haitian National Network for the Defense of Human Rights, commonly known as the RNDDH. And he is someone that should be better known. I think he's pretty well known among Haitians in Haiti. He's certainly known here in Washington, D.C. among in Congress, where he frequently testifies. And he's known at the National Endowment for Democracy, which funds his project. And Pierre Esperance was involved in the 2004 coup d'état that the U.S. engineered in Haiti. He ran a very serious disinformation campaign, inventing a massacre. He took a battle and turned it into he falsified it and claimed it was a massacre. And then he basically reprised the same role in 2019 to accuse 2018, the so-called La Saline massacre that we debunked, but he claimed that Cherizier carried out this massacre when in fact it was a battle between two different armed groups. So now Pierre Esperance is basically Washington's mouthpiece, and he has just published an article in Foreign Affairs magazine, which is the magazine of the Council on Foreign Relations, which is essentially maybe the primary Washington think tank establishment mouthpiece, has been for many years. So I want to show a couple kind of key parts of this article. And let me see if I can pull it up. I think I have access to it. Okay, this one's on us. I'm not paying for this, in case anyone's wondering. Yeah, I mean, there's a comment from Anthony Armand. Pierre Esperance has no credibility. Haitians know exactly who he is. And someone else says 100. Just to respond to your other point that you're saying, Anthony, well, I appreciate what you say on Esperance. Anthony says, here, we can show it on there. A lot of truths are being told, but we can't act like Jimmy is a revolutionary. Jimmy is a speech against Ariel, but he isn't willing to call out any of the big oligarchs like Biggio and Bossa. Do you want to respond to that, Kim? I'll let you handle that.
I don't know, Anthony, how you say that. He's I think got no problem to call them out, to speak against the oligarchy. He doesn't necessarily name all the members of the oligarchy. It's a lot of people to name. He's focusing, I think, on the first lines. The first line are the politicians the oligarchs use. He's trying to take them down, and then he gets to the oligarchy. And he said this recently in his speech. He said, the first one I'm dealing with are people just like me. They're tools. I have to get rid of the tools. Then we'll get to the oligarchy. And then after the oligarchy come the imperialists, So I think he's got a pretty clear picture of what he's going up against. And he's dealing with all kinds of dynamics, I'm sure. He's got limited power. He's got lots of enemies. And so he has to pick his battles carefully. You can't take up battle on every front. I mean, Aristide made that mistake in 2003 when he was fighting U.S. imperialism, and then he went and he pissed off French imperialism by saying, listen, I want, $21.7 billion in restitution of our independence debt. And France said, what the fuck? We're going to take you out. We're joining with the Americans. The French didn't support the first overthrow in 1991, it was the French ambassador who basically saved Aristide's life. But in 2003, they were all in on overthrowing Aristide because of that demand. So you can't shoot in every direction. You got a little gun. They have cannons. You have to be very smart in your battle. So I think what you have to see, Anthony, is Cherizier, whether he likes it or not, he's in the role. He is leading the charge against the status quo in Haiti. This is so, it couldn't be more obvious. He is the one who is fighting it. And, until I could see any evidence to the contrary, I don't see how you could say that, he's succeeded in keeping Ariel out. And now he's got to somehow secure the power. The power's up in the air. Nobody's got it. The ball is waiting to see who's going to grab it.
I think, if you watch our documentary, he does talk about the oligarchy. And he doesn't always go into, as Kim said, the detail about the laundry list of oligarchs and what he's going to do. But the oligarchs, this is the comprador bourgeoisie who are tied to the U.S. and the U.S. and its tools like Pierre Esperance constantly denounce him. As let's go back to this article, as you'll see here. Let's how to take on Haiti's gangs. America can do more to create stability and foster democracy by Pierre Esperance, earning those National Endowment for Democracy dollars. Also from
right there.
Yeah. Also, he has he's funded by George Soros's, Alexander Soros now, his son, Open Society Foundation. He's also funded by the American Jewish World Service, which I can tell you as a Jewish guy has nothing to do with Jews. In fact, the American Jewish World Service, its largest donor is Eric Schmidt, who is not Jewish, and in fact is the former CEO of Google and is now a top Pentagon contractor and is a very shady and dangerous character. So, I guess it's like Israel calls itself the Jewish state, and people, it can kind of take on some like air of morality or something. I guess the AJWS does the same thing, and that's that's the other group, one of the other main groups funding Esperance, and that's one of the things we reveal in Another Vision. I got that from interviewing Esperance and asking who's funding you, and he told me. So let's take a look at this article. We have if we go down here, let's scroll down a bit more. Let's see. The United States has
done this transformative change before.
Yeah. The United States should take the United States, which has long had a deciding role in Haitian politics, works with Haitian Democrats carefully and constructively. Here it is. The United States should take a more forceful and prominent role to support Haitian leaders on the presidential council. Okay.
Our people. Me.
Yeah, exactly. So you see Esperance.
He's the force behind Montana, by the way. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Pierre Esperance is very much in part of the Montana Accord and has been promoting them for years, which is the main grouping of the liberal elite opposition to Ariel Henry that is trying to take power, but has the same formula as Ariel Henry, which is get a U.S. orchestrated invasion in there to occupy the ghettos and take out the lower classes so they can't rise up. And he says an international security force may be necessary to install the transitional government and confront gang control of the capital. The gang leaders cannot be allowed to write the next chapter for Haiti. So
Washington must be allowed.
Yeah, Pierre Esperance is explicitly endorsing a foreign invasion of Haiti. When we were down there last
February.
August, I interviewed Esperance again. I went to his office and interviewed him. And he told me that he is not in favor of the MSS, as they were calling it, this foreign invasion, and that the Kenyans have really bad human rights record. And I actually did an investigation at Uncaptured about Kenyan death squads in the police forces. That for years and years there have been basically death squads that have murdered and disappeared thousands upon thousands of people, and disappeared their bodies, and they've been found in mass graves that were never found. And that's something that Pierre Esperance, the chief human rights figure in Haiti, has come to terms with. Because
I think before he said, Dan, to be totally parsing of words, he said, we don't need that, didn't he? Didn't he say we don't need that force? It's not like we don't want it. We don't need it.
I have to. I mean, yeah. That does sound familiar. I don't remember exactly. I'd have to review.
Anyway, I think that's what he said.
But. We reviewed the footage, but I mean, he did kind of, when I brought up the human rights record, he did. Yeah. So he gave me some kind of lip service. But there's some very key parts more in this article. He then goes on. Let's see, to say. Well, this is fascinating to me. So he talks about the massacres that supposedly were carried out in 2018, 2019. According to a report by Harvard Law School's International Human Rights Clinic, top aides to Moise participated in gang massacres in 2018 and 19. Okay. He is referring to a report by Harvard Law School's International Human Rights Clinic. Well, he has the link bad. Let me see if I can fix that. Let's see if we can pull it up. Yeah, whoever did that link to it poorly. Here it is. Okay, let's just look at this quickly. This is just too rich. Okay, this is the report that Pierre Esperance is referring to. Killing with impunity, state-sanctioned massacres in Haiti. If you've seen our documentary, you already know what's going to happen here. Okay. Let's look up RNDDH. Okay. This report is completely reliant on the RNDDH. The RNDDH in this report, if you can you, let me see if you can see that. Oh, I guess you can't see it on my. It is. I'm searching for RNDDH. That's how I'm finding these. It is mentioned 171 times. The authors of this Harvard Law School or Human Rights Clinic report didn't go to Haiti. They just completely relied on Pierre Esperance's totally bogus report. So what this is how it works. The NED creates something, it circulates it, and it kind of creates an echo chamber. And then Pierre Esperance, years later, can refer to, oh, look, Harvard Law School's Human Rights Clinic did this report.
So this is how the CIA does it with the mainstream media. They plant the story, the media puts it, and then they say, oh, here, we have this story, to use. So
exactly.
It's like a log rolling, I think they call that.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's who Esperance is referring to. Let's go back to that. Let's go back to this this article. So we have, he's referring to his own concoctions there, and then he says gang leader Jimmy Cherizier, widely known as Barbecue, responsible for civilian massacres, which we've already debunked. And then Guy Philippe, freshly released from a U.S. prison for money laundering. Oops. Again,
a plea deal.
On his, plea deal. Let me get back there. Okay. These criminals and their deputies cannot be allowed any role in governance. Okay. And then he has one more great one.
These criminals, declared criminals for him.
Yeah. And then
he's ruled they're criminals. So.
Right. He said they're criminals. Haiti needs immediate interim international security support to confront the gangs and help install the transitional government. So he is explicitly calling for this invasion. Before he said maybe, now he's saying we need it right now in order to install this transitional government. So basically, he's angling to be one of the rulers of Haiti while sitting in his human rights office through his connection to the Montana Accord that is part of this presidential transition council. So this is again, this is the mouthpiece of the Washington establishment, foreign affairs, that Pierre Esperance is writing or is published under his name. Who knows if he actually wrote this?
Yeah, he didn't write it.
Yeah.
Some cog. Look up also 2006
Oh,
or
in that same article.
2004. Yeah,
In that same
article. Yeah.
Okay. Hang on. Let me get back to it.
It's the paragraph. Yeah. Which or look for Eartha. Look for Eartha.
Earth. How about Boniface? Is that what you're looking
Yeah,
at?
there. Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you read this one? Yeah. Yeah.
Haiti has had successful transition governments twice in the past 40 years. The first was in 1990 after a series of military leaders failed to hold elections. The transition was led by Eartha Pascal Trujillo,
Trujillo,
a justice of the Haitian Supreme Court. The second was led by Boniface Alexandre, another Supreme Court justice who stepped in after Jean-Bertrand Aristide was ousted from power in 2004.
Just ousted. He was ousted. By whom? How? Yeah.
He just magically fell. We won't
go into the weeds on Eartha Pascal Trujillo. We could, but let's leave that one aside. But the second one, Boniface Alexandre, was a complete U.S. puppet. They carried out a coup. They kidnapped Aristide, and they had two characters, Gerard Latortue, previously mentioned, and then Boniface Alexandre is the president, who doesn't do much, right? The prime minister is the main executive. Boniface Alexandre was a unifying, what does he call them? A unifying figure?
He calls him
this unifying figure who carried out this bloody, outrageous. He was the least unifying figure you can possibly imagine. Yeah.
Here's a nice image
with Colin
Powell.
Colin
Powell.
Yeah, there it is. Good. Okay, so Boniface Alexandre. So, he can smooth over. This is how he's presenting to, I guess, he figures the readers of Foreign Affairs are just complete morons, and I'm sure most of them are. But I mean, most of the ones who it's written for are. I'm not saying us critical journalists reading it, but it's truly, there he is with
James
U.S.
Foley.
Ambassador James Foley, who recently said the U.S. is going to have to intervene itself. It's not going to be able to do it with the blackface mercenaries that we're using from Africa. We're going to have to send in the 82nd Airborne. So Foley is basically had a Washington Post op-ed last week, which essentially said, U.S. is going to have to intervene. I did it back in 2004, and that was the only way we could basically bring dysfunctional Haiti to heal. I mean, he has just one incredibly arrogant statement in there, something like, Haiti is so dysfunctional, it has a way of just getting on the agenda of U.S. Officials, and they just can't behave. They're such troublesome children.
Yeah, so exactly. So, I mean, this really, I think, article speaks volumes about not only the current moment, but who Esperance is, what he represents, what these guys have in store for Haiti. I mean, he basically wants a civil war. He wants an invasion and a civil war. He wants a long-term occupation of Haiti. So you really, this guy's just a total wolf in sheep's clothes, and it's. I mean, if this happens, there's going to be a lot of blood, and Esperance will have a lot on his hands.
He wants an Iraq invasion. He wants a shock and awe operation, which will basically just drop bunker buster bombs on Lower Delma, kill Cherizier and everybody else there, and any Guy Philippe, of course, would be taken out. They might even keep some of the criminal gangs, recycle them somehow if they can, But anyway, it's a very cynical situation.
Yeah.
or plan they have.
And so then there's, I didn't have this pulled up before, but I think we should look at it. Oh, now I've lost my tab again. Brilliant. Hang on one second. Too many tabs open. But we should look at this. All right, bear with me one second.
Yeah. In the meantime, yeah, Esperance is also a guy who we have interviews in the coming film we're going to drop soon with Charleston Sanon, who is a young guy who was security trained expert working for Moise Jean Charles. Pierre Esperance basically framed this guy as being a child soldier. You got it? Mm-hmm. Anyway, he's framed him. The guy, then 23, I think at the time, went into jail for 10 years on the basis of the framing that Pierre Esperance did. And so the guy lost 10 years of his life for being used as a tool by Pierre Esperance against another politician called Joseph Lambert. It was an unsavory guy, but anyway, the guy is just so cynical and so ready to do anything and is so feared by the political class, by everybody in Haiti. He's like J. Edgar Hoover. He's got dirt on everybody. He has probably, I don't know, all kinds of capacity at intelligence collection, probably working directly with CIA. I don't know. But in any case, all I can say is that he's a highly feared and very dangerous guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got your thing?
Yeah, I do. Somebody just... Yeah, there we go. AR Arge 1997 just asked if I have a Patreon account, and I do. I just put it on. Oh, let me put the ticker back on. There we go. There it is. Patreon.com/uncaptured. You can. I appreciate any donations, and I'll make sure it goes to this Haiti work, so it's shared by Haiti Liberté and Uncaptured, and let me just say this before we continue. Again, we are a totally independent. We're totally independent operations. We don't have any big donors or anything. So to do this work really just comes out of our own pockets. So donations are greatly appreciated. So just to reiterate that. And then Petionville says, you forgot about these STP clowns like Andre Michel. Kim talked about Andre Michel earlier.
Yeah, we were touching on them. I mean, yeah, STP, yeah, for sure.
There's this. I want to show one more. We're going to wrap it up relatively soon. I want to show one more piece that I think really shows. I think between there are three articles that have come out recently. One is the article from James Foley, which basically says the U.S. is going to have to go alone. And we didn't show that, but Kim briefly mentioned it. The U.S. is just going to have to invade Haiti. And that's essentially what Dan Foote, the former U.S. Special Convoy to Haiti, told me.
Envoy.
Is that not what I said? Oh, what I said?
You said convoy.
Envoy, yes. U.S. Special Envoy to Haiti told me back in 2022, he said that he had recently resigned from the Biden administration, and he said he was pushing for Montana and also for U.S. military special forces to go to Haiti and train basically a hit squad in the Haitian National Police to take out Cherizier. And he said, look, we're going to do that, send a few dozen of these guys. We're going to send 25,000 U.S. troops. So, which do you want? And he wasn't saying that as, this is bad that we'll do that. He was saying, let's do it the cleaner way, kind of the Obama style way,
the smarter way,
the Bush way. Yeah. And so now now that the U.S. has kind of failed to get this MSS or any kind of, force in there to really be able to take out Cherizier and the G9, and Cherizier has united majority of the armed groups in Port-au-Prince under Vivant Sam. Now, James Foley, the former U.S. ambassador, is openly saying we're going to have to go with the big guns. and just send our own troops. I don't think we've quite reached that point yet, though it is interesting that he's floating it. I think that represents a certain faction in the Washington establishment that is thinking that way.
And they're preparing the ground, preparing
Exactly.
psychologically,
Exactly. So first we have that James Foley piece. Secondly, we have that Pierre Esperance op-ed in Foreign Affairs that we just saw. And third, we have this piece, which is from March 28th, published in the ironically named U.S. Institute of Peace, from Keith Mines, who is a longtime State Department figure. And he very clearly says that he's talking about this presidential transition council, and he says right here, the council's establishment would allow for the entry of a multinational security force that would then be able to join with the Haitian National Police and restore order. So he's being very explicit, and this is a very revealing publication that says that this council, along with it comes this foreign invasion, and along with it, air support, drones. Sorry, I keep highlighting this. Air support, drones, and intelligence. And so, then he gets into more. Let's see.
mercenaries.
As it is currently envisioned, this would then allow Ariel Henry to resign and turn over power to the council, which would then elect a new interim president and name a new interim president to lead the country to elections after stability is restored by a multinational force. So there it is. That is the whole game for the U.S. right now, is to get this group in, along with a foreign invasion of Haitian or of Kenyan death squads and whatever. Basically military forces from a variety of countries, not only Kenya.
Didn't he raise the possibility of mercenaries at some point in there?
Yes, he does say that. Let me get there. It's right here. He says, very fraught with challenges. To begin with, many believe the council will only be able to take power if it is escorted by a robust personal security force. So, they're going to be installed. He's talking about basically a dictatorship installed, at the barrel of a gun.
Blackwater's gun.
Yeah, it is not clear who provides that for. This is driving me insane. Kenya has agreed to lead a UN-sanctioned multinational security support mission, but is hoping that this new transitional government would help the force gain legitimacy in Haiti. Which is totally crazy. Not be something it would need to physically protect. Those are some high hopes there. I would say delusional. A more reasonable arrangement, he says, might be for privatized security force to be contracted to provide protection to the new government while the MSS continues to restore security more broadly across the country. And so essentially he's saying we'll have the Kenyans or whoever secure these new rulers that are being imposed while the rest, or I'm sorry, a privatized force. So
they would be
some kind of Blackwater type force would protect the new regime while the Kenyans rampage and whoever else, the Bahamians and Jamaicans, and would rampage across the country and terrorize the population, particularly, of course, in the slums. This is, this really just says everything. And this is what Haiti's facing. So, I find it, so fascinating that our critics, Kim, are focused on, denouncing you and I as white CIA agents, and have literally nothing to say about what the imperial mouthpieces like Pierre Esperance or Keith Mines and James Foley are openly stating that they're planning an invasion, whether through privatized security forces or just foreign forces altogether. The focus is on us. It really is kind of mind-boggling to me.
And just one thing I want to say before I forget, Foley's proposal is really how the U.S. has done it in the last two interventions in 94 and 2004. The first wave was really done by the U.S. with French and Canadian help. And then they would pass it off to the cheaper third world troops of the UN after 3 months. So it was 3 months in 1994. It was 3 months in 2004. That is, the U.S. troops arrived on March 1st, right after February 29th abduction. And then the MINUSTA took over on June 1st. So I think what Foley is saying is that basically we're going to have to do it the same way. And I think in that article they talked, or in another article, maybe talking about Foley's article, they said it would be an interim force, an interim. They'll say, okay, we're going to have to take the 82nd Airborne or the 10th Mountain Division or whatever, send them in for 3 months to basically, do the heavy lifting. Then we'll bring in this new Kenyan, Benin, Chad, Barbados, Spain, whoever else is in it, Salvador probably, force to maintain the status quo that we set up.
Exactly. So, any other final thoughts you want to share, Kim, or I think we've.
Yeah, I'm losing altitude, as they say, or as one of my Haitian friends used to say, I'm losing my personality, and my congested state that I have at night is starting to creep up. So,
all right. Well,
I don't have too much more. Just people, we gotta let's stop the foolishness of attacking Cherizier or even Guy Philippe, and look what Haiti is facing.
Yeah, get out of this ultra left or whatever mindset that based on the past, and look at what the imperial agents and mouthpieces are actually saying right now, because they are open about their plans for an invasion and an occupation of Haiti, and they are open. They're explicit about who the targets are and who they think the bad guy is. So this is not some kind of 12-dimensional chess where the U.S. is saying, we want to take out barbecue and is funding barbecue at the same time. It's just, there's no evidence of that. So deal with reality, be scientific. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that our most rabid attackers can be put in three categories. One, it's the Lavalas nostalgists who think that Lavalas still means something. I mean, Aristide gave a speech a couple of days ago. I mean, he couldn't figure out what the hell the guy was talking about. He was talking in all kinds of code, but nobody's talking about that. That's not, got the country electrified in any way. So people, it's 2024. It is not 2004. It is not 1994. It is 2024. The Lavalas of today is not the Lavalas that it was. Two, I think it's the ultra left, who is, has this grudge against Cherizier, who sort of, I could say, undresses them, because he's the one who goes out into the slums and looks at the, people and says, people can't be living like this. We have to change it with a gun. They're doing what Che would have done. And, so these guys sitting in their salons and going to their world economic forums and so forth are shown to be pretty much useless.